Hey everybody, Mike Juan here, and it is, according to the Gregorian calendar time tracking system, January 23rd, year 2024. And we're going to talk a little bit about astrology and specifically about Pluto. From an astrological perspective, it's all in the news right about now. For those who follow such popular astrology sort of things, they've probably heard a lot about Pluto moving into Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius is bringing more unprecedented times. How Pluto in Aquarius will affect each sign of the zodiac. Pluto in Aquarius will be the most important astrological transit of the year. Pluto moves into Aquarius January 20th. What to know about the 2024 transit. And so let me first, we're going to deconstruct this because, I talk about a bunch of different things on this channel. Astrology is one of them. And manipulation of people through the paradigm is one of them. And this is an opportunity to combine the two and to look at the two in real time. And even more interesting, particularly if you saw the most recent video I put out, we'll see how this all kind of ties in synchronistically to my own story. So let's first go and explain what Pluto in Aquarius means. I mean, part of what I see in astrology right now is like a lot of people are familiar with astrological concepts, but it's all just abstract. They don't understand that being able to read an astrological chart enables you to become knowledgeable of the evening sky without the need of an app on your phone. So let's go look at this. So this is Sunday, January 21st, 2024, 1:12 p.m., New York, New York. And so this is the astrological chart. Whenever you look at a chart, this is an actual snapshot of what the heavens look like from a particular place on Earth at a particular date and time. So the first thing is, and this is true with every astrological chart, you see this AC, this black triangle right here, and this black triangle right here. This is the DC. It's just not labeled, but this represents the east-west horizon. This is the plane of Earth, and everything above the plane is what's visible in the sky at a particular time, at a particular place, and where they are in the sky. So what they're telling us is that Pluto is moving into Aquarius. So this is where we see it. This is the symbol of Pluto right here. What I think is most interesting about this is that, and it's not even mentioned in these headlines, is not only is Pluto moving into Aquarius, but it's moving into Aquarius at the same location. It's in the same location as the sun. Like in 30 days, the sun's going to be here. In 30 days, the sun would be right here. The beginning of Capricorn or the end of Aquarius. But all of this is lined up with the sun, which is I think part of the reason why this is being pushed so much, because there are other alignments occurring. But anyways, you could see right here, this says 0 degrees. This is showing that Pluto, which is a slow-moving planet, it will be in the same place in the heavens in 224 years. I think that's the orbit time for Pluto to go all the way around the ecliptic, which is also interesting as it's 2024, how those numbers line up. And being sun, these numbers are based upon the sun. All of our concept of a year is solar based. When we talk about the measurement of time and we say year, we're talking about sun measurement. That's the point of reference. So there's a lot of alignment, at least in the subtext of what's going on. But this is where we see it. 0 degrees at Aquarius. That's what this line is right here. And you wouldn't be able to see it because the sun is in the same place where Pluto is. Well, you wouldn't even be able to see it even if the sun wasn't there, because Pluto can only be seen with a telescope, and you need a pretty powerful one at that, I think. I don't know. I've never seen Pluto. Anyway, so this is where this is the hoopla. This is what they're talking about. And I'm gonna poke some holes in this in a little bit, but we're gonna work up to it. So to really understand the astrological archetypes tied to the planets, like the easiest way to do it is we begin by looking at mythology. And because I live in the United States, and the United States is Western focused, I'll look at Western mythology, though the planets are their archetypes are more similar than less similar when comparing the different astrological types, like the astrological types being Western and Vedic. But, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole yet. So let's go look at Pluto from mythology. So in the ancient Greek religion and mythology, Pluto was the ruler of the Greek underworld. So that's basically the primary thing we want to think about with Pluto. And astrologically, like Pluto is considered to be like a heavy hitter, if you will. Why? Because Pluto is the ruler of the underworld, and the underworld has a lot of different implications. But typically, when people think astrology, they're going to think psychological implications. But all things underworld is what Pluto is said to be the ruler of. The earlier name for Pluto was the god Hades. Pluto represents a more positive concept of the god of the underworld that presides over afterlife. So we can see a little bit of that. And this is where the meaning, the archetypical meaning of the planet is tied into collective consciousness and astrology. You go and you look at the other planets, you look at the other mythologies, look at Mars and the god of war, and Venus, the goddess of love, Mercury, the communicator of the gods. Like it's the same in the mythologies as it is in the archetypes of the planets in astrology. But in our modern time, most people, your typical mainstream person probably knows less of Pluto as a mythological figure, though that does not mean that the mythological meaning does not affect them in a subconscious, collective, subconscious sort of way. But more people probably know Pluto as the Disney character. And it's funny, like before doing this video, like I've been aware of like Pluto and Disney, and I've talked about it a lot, but I've been getting Pluto actually confused with the Disney character Goofy. So in preparation for this video, I learned a thing or two, or I got a little bit more clear. So Disney is such an important element for understanding the manipulation of culture. From the very beginning, Disney was hand in hand with the military-industrial complex. Arguably, it's always been, part of the military-industrial complex. And we understand Disney and Hollywood as means of shaping perspectives of how the mainstream individual and how the collective consciousness perceives reality. So Pluto is a cartoon character created by the Walt Disney Company, yellow-orange color, medium-sized, short-haired dog, mixed breed dog, and he made his debut as a bloodhound in the Mickey Mouse cartoon, The Chain Gang. So I saw this all from Wikipedia. And so I saw this little blurb from Wikipedia, and it just kind of made me smile. It says, several months had passed between naming of what had then been classified the ninth planet Pluto on May 1st, 1930. So in astrology, like these modern planets, Pluto being discovered in 1930 or introduced into the collective consciousness into 1930. And another example would be Chiron, which was discovered in 1977. These were not part of the astrological model or makeup prior to their discovery. So astrology's been around for a whole lot longer than this, and astrologers did not use these. They couldn't use Pluto or they couldn't use Chiron in this example until their discovery. And then through the linking of the mythological name comes the astrological implications. So, okay, so Pluto was discovered May 30th, and the attachment of the name to the dog character. So again, this is all anchoring. This is, if you understand what anchoring is in hypnosis or in NLP, you can understand that on a larger scale. That's what we see is done right here. It's the same model in which Edward Bernays, who is the nephew of Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud created a model of the psyche, and then Sigmund Freud created a model of the individual psyche, and then Edward Bernays applied that logic on the mass mind and developed what we call public relations or propaganda. And so the same thing is done right here. When we see that Disney has linked in the concept of Pluto, which has just been introduced as an astrological concept, and now it's also being linked into this like really, really easy to digest into the mind, this fictional fun dog. Fun in the fact that you're watching a movie, you're watching a cartoon, your mental guards are down, you're letting in all of this fiction into your mind, but it still goes somewhere. So let's keep going with this. So where am I going with this? Disney animator Ben Sharpstein said, "We thought the name Rover was too common, so we had to look for something else. We changed it to Pluto Pup, but I honestly don't remember why." Some Disney animators reportedly believed that Walt Disney chose the name to capitalize on the sensation of the newly named planet. I mean, like, of course he's going to do that to like link the planets, but like the whole idea of we don't remember why and reportedly believed, like, there aren't things particularly done like this by happenstance. So, okay, let's go look a little bit deeper of how Pluto was introduced. So Pluto was introduced, as we saw right here, in the Mickey Mouse cartoon, The Chain Gang, which I think came out in 1930. This is The Chain Gang right here. You can see Mickey Mouse has a really different expression than what he's known as now. It's fascinating to look at these older cartoons and to see how occultic and dark and esoteric a lot of them are, not just the Disney ones. But anyway, let's keep going. So Legacy, this is also from Wikipedia. In a scene animated by Norm Ferguson, Mickey is chased by two bloodhounds after his prison break. We see each hound approach, sniff, and then bark directly into the camera. According to this other guy, these hounds are possibly the most elaborately designed and most naturally behaving animals in any theatrical cartoon up until this point. So the idea of this character, this is the dog. This is like a screenshot from the movie, and these are the prototype of Pluto. There was a lot of effort and energy being put into like the animation. Like, at the time, this was probably like cutting edge, like just like the first time CGI was released into a movie, that was like a big deal. This was a big deal. The dogs were alive and real. We probably look back at this and we think it's silly. when CGI first came out, it was like, oh my God, that's such amazing technology. It looks so real. We look at it now. I think CGI came out in the 90s. We look at 90s CGI and it looks ridiculous. But at the time it looked real. We can assume that this looked very, very real to the consciousness of the people at the time they saw that. This effort to really embed into the mind the reality of Pluto, of these bloodhounds. Keep this in mind. I always thought this was fascinating. Like when movies were first introduced, and I think they were introduced like in World's Fairs, like the first movies which people saw, they weren't even like stories. It was just like film projected onto a screen, and it would be a film of the camera would be put on a train track, and it would be filming a train coming at the camera. And when people, you read about this, so I wasn't there. When people saw this, remember they've never seen anything like a movie before, and they saw the train coming at them on the movie screen. People ran out in terror. And the reason why is because their mind was not able to distinguish between reality and this trickery, this magic, if you will. So when we look back and we see like how hokey the old technology looks, it's like we're looking at it from a modern mind, where like it seems silly. But when we put it in context of what our earlier, our ancestors saw it, like they looked at it and they interpreted it very, very differently. So the point I really want to make, though, is that Pluto was introduced as two dogs, one of these two dogs, and it was a guard. So the story of the chain gang was Mickey Mouse was on a chain gang. He was in jail. He was a prisoner, and he was on a chain gang where all the prisoners were chained together on the by the ankle, and they were doing probably some manual labor. And Mickey Mouse escapes, and then these bloodhounds and this prison guard go and chase after him. So why is this interesting? There's why is this Walt Disney chose to capitalize on this newly named planet like ridiculous? Well, we know that Pluto is another name for Hades. And as we talked about in the previous two videos, is that there was a 2 or 3 headed dog which guarded Hades, Cerberus. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. It was the Hound of Hades, or the Hound of Pluto. And specifically, if you know your mythology, what Hades was done was to keep the dead souls that were in the underworld from escaping. It's the exact same story right here. All of this energy to like link in Pluto to like the guard dog of Hades, obviously that this wasn't done by just capitalizing on a new planet. This goes much, 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 much deeper. And, I talked about this. I talked about this specifically just yesterday, I think, is when I recorded the updated video of the dogs, the dogs of the Rottweilers, the underground dogs, the living examples, living for me at least, manifestations of these dogs of the underworld. Another similarity is within Greek mythology, and I'm not an expert by any stretch, so I'm going to do my best to explain it from my limited perspective. But Hercules, he had these trials, the 12 trials of Hercules, which has often been interpreted astrotheologically, that Hercules is a symbol of the sun, and his 12 trials are the sun going through the 12 signs of the zodiac. That's the same thing that happens here, because Mickey Mouse is, I didn't finish this. So So the final trial for Hercules, his final trial was he had to go into the underworld and bring back Cerberus. And that's what he did. That's what we see right here. Hercules with Cerberus. And he brought back the guard dog of Hercules, of the underworld, and it became his pet. Like he tamed the underworld. And that's what happens with Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse is being tracked down by these dogs, by Pluto, the predecessor to Pluto. When Pluto was first introduced, when it was still like Cerberus, it was still the guard dog of the underworld, trying to bring him back, just like what Cerberus would do. Cerberus would bring back any sort of soul trying to escape the underworld. The prison is the underworld. And then we see later that Pluto becomes Mickey's pet. Pluto becomes Mickey's best friend. You know, just like Hercules, this dog becomes like Hercules' dog. So I guess in this metaphor, we could even think of Mickey Mouse as the sun, which is just like looking at it astrotheologically. But you know, I kind of want to end it there. I'm not trying to go any deeper, other than the fact that astrology is embedded everywhere. We live in an astrological world, regardless of what you think about it, regardless if it's actually accurate. We live in an astrological world, which brings us back to why this is such a big deal, right? Like, you know, January of this year has already started out with all this craziness, right? Like the Nephilim in Miami and all the other stuff. And this is really getting hyped up right here. So let's go and poke some holes in it, right? So we got Pluto. Pluto is entered into Aquarius, and the world will never be the same. Except, that's only true if you follow tropical astrology. And I would say about like half the astrological world follows tropical astrology. So this chart right here shows the tropical astrological placements Sunday, June 21st, 2024 at 1:12 p.m. in New York, New York. We could see this is where everything is, and we see Pluto is entering into Aquarius. But the other half of the astrological world follows sidereal placement. And we can see the sidereal chart. This is Sunday, January 21st, 2024, 1:12 p.m. at New York, New York. Exact same place. But now we're looking at the sidereal chart. And we could see we've got the Sun and Pluto. They're in the same place. You've got the Sun and Pluto. They're in the same place. You've got Saturn right here, right by the midheaven. Saturn's right by the midheaven. You see the moon is getting ready to cross over the eastern horizon and become visible. You see the same thing here. It's because these charts, like they present, and this is what, when I talk about natural astrology, it's understanding astrology where there aren't contradictions. So what the contradiction is according to sidereal, Pluto is at 4 degrees Capricorn. Pluto's not entering into Aquarius. Pluto is just, it's just getting into Capricorn. But here we see that Pluto is entering into Aquarius. And you see all of this hype, Pluto's bringing unprecedented times, Pluto into Aquarius. But Pluto's not entering Aquarius right here. It's the same friggin' sky. But they're hyping this up. They're putting this into the mind. I'm pausing right now because I can get into a little bit of like why there's a truth to this, because there are going to be people who subscribe and have put in mental energy to understanding Pluto into Aquarius, into understanding astrology from a tropical perspective. And I'm most definitely not saying like sidereal is better than tropical. I'm just saying that they're contradictory. The truth of the matter is the moon at this time is about to go and cross the horizon. The sun is in this placement in the sky. The sun is in this placement in the sky. Venus is about to go beneath the horizon. Like, that is true. The signs are just subjectively true. They're only true based upon the model which you follow. And when you can begin to ascertain and understand and separate the differences between these different astrological models, you begin to free yourself from astrology. As I was saying earlier, like, astrology is so deep in the programming of the paradigm. There is a truth, in my opinion, to the significance of understanding where the heavenly bodies are and how they relate to where they were when you were born. There is benefit and truth, and there is mystery associated with it, but it's not the way it's being sold to us. So let me go and I want to talk a little bit about astrology, or sidereal and tropical, give a little bit more detail and make it even more real for you guys. All right. So sidereal astrology accounts for the Earth's axial precession and maintains the alignment between signs and constellations via corrective systems known as, I don't know how to pronounce it. This is in Vedic astrology. These are the systems. Sidereal is typically used, a sidereal placement is used with Vedic interpretation of astrology. Tropical placement is used with Western interpretation of astrology. Like, it gets really confusing. Like, it gets even more confusing when you add in 12 sign and 13 sign and real sky. Like, there are all of these ways which go and show you, like, put less emphasis on the signs because they can change depending upon what system you use. But anyway, so sidereal deals with axial precession, or the precession of the equinoxes, whereas tropical astrology is based upon the seasonal cycle of the northern hemisphere and does not take into account axial precession. Now, I'm going to come back to this in a moment, but the key thing is, and I want to point out a contradiction right here. This is general, so this may not be true with all people who are talking astrology, all people who are kind of hyping up this Pluto and Aquarius, but it's often tied into, like, the Age of Aquarius. Pluto entering Aquarius is only true from a tropical perspective. So if you subscribe to tropical placement and maybe you use Western interpretation of astrology, you're like, okay, Pluto is in Aquarius. And if you're believing that, if you subscribe to that, you are going to see those effects. And I'll even go so far and say that we are being sold that for predictive programming purposes. But you can't then go tie it into the Age of Aquarius, because the very nature of the astrological ages, the age of Pisces, the age of Aquarius, the age of Aries, all of that comes from the precession of the equinoxes. That's what that means. That's where the ages come from, through the movement or the precession of the equinoxes, which is the shift in the sky over long periods of time, 1 degree every 72 years. That's the axial precession. Sidereal is about precession of the equinoxes. So if you are using tropical to define Pluto going into Aquarius, but then you're using sidereal to say we're entering the Age of Aquarius, it doesn't make sense. You're like, you're commingling apples and oranges without, like, I mean, I guess you can. Like, you could juice apples and orange and make an apple and orange juice, which is kind of happening, but that's not being explained. Like, it's like, this is just like mumbo jumbo, astrological mumbo jumbo, which does have real implications, because if you assume it to be true, you're going to act out as if it were true, but it's just sloppy astrology. So, all right, let me give you some clear examples of like the differences between, like, sidereal and tropical and natural astrology. So, all right. This picture here, this was taken in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, when I was living in Lancaster. It was taken right outside of the house I was living in on the the autumnal equinox at 9 p.m. and I'm facing south, which puts the east on the left and the west on the right. You see the moon right there. And we see this is Jupiter and this is Saturn. I put these circles around it so that it's more clear. This is them right here. This is the undoctored picture, if you will. That's Saturn, that's Jupiter. You can see them in the sky with the naked eye. And we're going to go and we're going to look at the astrological chart. This is September 20th, 2021. September 20th, 2021, 9 p.m., Lancaster, PA. This is Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 9 p.m. And as I said before, this line right here where the ascendant and the descendant are, always in the same place, the 9 o'clock position and the 3 o'clock position on an astrological chart. This is always the horizon, and what you see above the horizon is literally what you see in the sky. You don't need to have an app on your phone. The reason why you don't want an app on your phone is because you don't want to get in the habit of using technology of your medium for life. I mean, theoretically, I guess, yeah, you got this chart from the internet. So yeah, okay, but we're taking baby steps here. So this is what was visible in the sky at 9 p.m. And we're looking at the ecliptic, which means we are looking south and the east is on the left because the ascendant is always the east and this is the west. And I cleaned it up right here. I took away all of the things other than the moon and the Jupiter and Saturn. Symbol for Jupiter, symbol for Saturn, that's the moon. And we see this relationship. So this is the horizon. You see the moon is rising up. And then you could see there's like this proximity between Jupiter and Saturn. They look pretty close, at least compared to the distance between Jupiter and the moon. And here we see it again. We see there's the moon, there's Jupiter, there's Saturn. And this line right here, this curve, is the ecliptic. That's what all of this zodiac represents. Really, from here to here, this is what we see. This is the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the path in which the sun and the heavenly bodies and the moon, they all go across the same path in the sky. This is the path. We can see it here. That's what's so nice about having three. That's why invisible in your view, you could see the moon, you could see Jupiter, you can see Saturn, you can see three heavenly bodies. So you can see the line of the ecliptic. And we could see right here in tropical, I've applied this tropical chart. This is tropical right here. We can see this is the moon, and it says right here that the moon is on the cusp, or the line in between Pisces and Aries. There it is. There's the moon. There's Pisces and Aries. And that's the moon right there. And we could see Jupiter and Saturn are in Aquarius, of all places, right? This is Jupiter, or this is Pluto right here. This was taken in 2021, so 3 years ago. You get an idea of how slow Jupiter moves. Like Jupiter is entering into Aquarius, but actually that's not exactly true because it goes back and forth. But we won't go down retrograde at this point. But we can see, like, according to this map, according to the tropical chart, you could go out and look and you see, like, there's the moon, there's Jupiter, there's Saturn, and we could say that this is Aquarius and this is like the cusp between Pisces and Aries. And now we pull up the sidereal chart. Exact same sky. The sky has not changed. This is natural astrology, understanding the placements of the heavenly bodies, where they are related to each other, where they are related to Earth, and using the signs to identify where they are, but not for meaning. Because right here we see in sidereal that actually Jupiter, it's right in Capricorn, and Saturn is in Capricorn, and the moon is in Pisces. Well, how can it be? The moon is here, Jupiter's here, and Saturn's there. There's no mistaking that. That is a factual statement. I can see them with my eyes. There's no misinterpretation that. The misinterpretation is when you're going to go and say, like, well, they're in this sign or they're in that sign. There are probably people who are going to be watching this who are maybe familiar with astrology, and they'll be like, well, sidereal is more close to the constellations, and that is true. But they're not the constellations. Real sky astrology will be more accurate. In sidereal astrology, they say that each one of the the zodiacal signs, which align to the constellations, they don't line up perfectly, because sidereal says that each one of these signs is 30 degrees. Each one of these constellations, they're all consistent at 30 degrees. But that's not true. The actual constellations vary. Virgo is 44 degrees. I can't think of any of the smaller ones off the top of my head. But it's inconsistent. It is subjective to the system you are following. If you only are using the systems to identify where everything is, well, then you're not getting caught up in this. Okay. So what is going on with this? I mentioned it a little bit earlier. We're talking about predictive programming, right? So, well, okay, before we get to there, so let's take a step back. So where does astrology, we gotta put into context, where does astrology come from? Astrology comes from Babylon. Like the idea of the heavenly bodies and identifying them with the ecliptic, and then dividing the ecliptic up into the sky and then casting meaning, that all comes from Babylon. And at least that's our history. I'm working off of the history we have been told. I definitely am by no means am suggesting that the history we're told is accurate or fully accurate. I don't know what the accuracy is, but this is what we're working with. And we also know that they told us that the Babylonians are the ones that gave us taxation, and they gave us class systems, and they gave us slavery, and they gave us all agriculture and all of these other sort of things. So these are the same people, the same priest classes that gave us all of these other things in society. They also gave us this. It's an interesting idea where this is all also from the Nephilim, or the falling angels, bringing it back to the story of Miami in early January. But anyway, I want to point that out as like a point of reference. When we are looking at astrology, we gotta take in consideration where it was introduced. All right. So predictive programming. So predictive programming, if you're watching this channel, you're probably familiar with it, but predictive programming is basically the idea of introducing ideas into the subconscious of individuals and the collective subconscious, in order to bring about a certain reality. There are kind of two different schools of thought as to, how predictive programming works. One school of thought is it's all a plan, and they lay out, 9/11 is the best example. They put out all of these different implications to 9/11 in movies and TV shows in the years before 9/11. And the reason is so that, here's some of the reasons, so that when it happens, people are kind of been prepared for it. Another reason is by the powers that be, by saying that this is what they're going to do, they get a loophole out of karma. There's another school of thought, which is this is all being run by interdimensional archons who aren't able to create, but what they do is they put that in our minds so that we then create it through our own creativity. I don't know. I certainly have some thoughts, but there seems to be something there. And predictive programming with the Age of Aquarius, Age of Aquarius, all of this stuff is generally could fall underneath the New Age, New Age, quote unquote, air quotes, and New Age was introduced to us from Theosophy and H.P. Blavatsky and all that sort of stuff. And then in the 60s, when a lot of New Age went mainstream, because from the time of Theosophy, New Age was more of a it wasn't as mainstream. And then during the coming of age of the baby boomer generation is when the Age of Aquarius and astrology really became much more common. And the song, The Age of Aquarius from the movie, all right, first the musical, and then the Broadway musical, or the theatrical musical, and then the movie musical, Hair. And also we see in the 2005 film, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, the very final scene of that movie is this dance sequence to the Age of Aquarius. And that is like, it makes no sense to the movie, but it's because all of this is meant to like introduce ideas on a deeper level. The very title, 40-Year Virgin, like virgin is a hint to Virgo. Year, we're talking about the sun again. I mean, I have certain thoughts as to what 40-Year Virgin title means, but those are just my thoughts. But what I can say with certainty is like, this was an important film of introducing ideas into the collective consciousness at a certain time, and we see that. And so where I'm going with all of this is the Age of Aquarius, and then particularly this big deal of like of Pluto moving into Aquarius. So the actual Age of Aquarius, if you want to go and use sidereal charts, like when Pluto actually is going to enter into Aquarius following sidereal, which takes in consideration the precession of the equinoxes, and the precession of the equinoxes are what gives us our different ages, and ages said to last more or less 2,000 years, and it's there's an Age of Aquarius and Age of Pisces, and this is it's a 25,000 year cycle. It's called the Platonic year, the Great Year. That really doesn't start until the year 2400. We're nowhere near the Age of Aquarius, but where the Age of Aquarius as a concept is being introduced into the mainstream consciousness is from people who are also grounded in tropical astrology. Like, it doesn't add up. The only way it adds up is when this story Age of Aquarius is being sold to people. And the Age of Aquarius, the archetypes associated with Aquarius are electricity, innovation, new ways of being, and the group. And this is and it's also being said to be sold to us as the golden age of humanity. But the truth of the matter is, I don't think there's a real Age of Aquarius, meaning like there's a tangible Age of Aquarius. It's an idea which is being sold, and because it's being internalized and it's being sold so uniformly and deeply over a long period of time, it's being brought out. And what's being brought out is Age of Aquarius in a shadow Saturnian way. This when Saturn was in Aquarius, this was right after if you go back a few years, there was a conjunction known as the Great Conjunction of when Jupiter and Saturn were right next to each other. You could see there's a space here between them. A little bit before that, Jupiter and Saturn were in the same spot. They were conjuncted, and they were at 0 degrees Aquarius. And now we have, coming forward, we've got Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius. They're really, really pushing this Saturnian and this Pluto Age of Aquarius. And from an astrological, tropical, Western model, Saturn and Pluto are malefic planets. They're bad planets. And so they want to introduce the ugly version of the Age of Aquarius, which is all just mythology anyway. And how they're introducing it is electricity, is through computer technology, and through globalism. There's your innovation, there's your electricity, and there is your humanity, your group family. And all of that, like, it fits into the narrative, but it is very, very, like, it's done in a certain way. So that's the story which is being sold. As we become clear of this, let me say one more thing before I finish. As we become clear of this, I talk about the Susquehanna mystery. globalism, electricity, and the first computer, those three things which I just mentioned, which are the keystones of this shadow age of Aquarius, which is being introduced into humanity, they all had their first fruits. They all were invented on the Susquehanna River. It's how all of this, like river and stars, is integrated. But so as we become aware of this, as we begin to see what's happening, as we see this model, as we see it's not real, as we see that the wizard behind the curtain is just like this tiny little guy who's trying to scare everyone, it loses its charge. All right, so I want to wrap this up by saying, like, I practice natural astrology. You know, I'm not being contradictory by saying that the astrology doesn't, like, you know, that tropical or sidereal, they're not real. I think there's a real significance in understanding your natal chart or the position of the planets when you were born, and also understanding those where the planets are in their never-ending movement. And it doesn't matter whether you use tropical or sidereal. You just use a system and you stick with it for identification. So right here, this is the sidereal chart for January 21st, the one I just showed you. Like, you know, the big scary thing of like when Pluto enters into Aquarius. And then this is, I'm using my birth chart just as an example. Like, what matters is, like, you compare this to your own chart. I was born in the early 70s, and all people are born in this time. We have Pluto located right at the very beginning of Libra. Now we have Pluto in the very beginning of Aquarius. These two are 120 degrees apart from one another. I know it's 120 degrees because I can count. Each one of these pie pieces is 30. This right here is where Pluto is right now, 30, 60, 90, 120. Pluto right now is having a trine transit to my chart. That's true to anyone who is born around the same time as me. You know, if you're born a different generation, you know, go and look at your chart. You want to go and look at where the Pluto is relative to your own personal chart. But the point I'm going to make is that doesn't change when you go and you switch to sidereal. So this is the same chart now in sidereal. This is my chart in sidereal. If you're going to do comparisons, like of your chart to something else, just make certain you're using the same systems. Sidereal or tropical to tropical, sidereal to sidereal. Here we have Pluto, you know, on January 21st at 4 degrees Capricorn. Well, where's Pluto in my chart in sidereal? Oh, it's at 7 degrees Virgo. Still 120 degrees apart from one another. That trine transit doesn't go away. That is when we can begin to take away the signs, because you could interpret this very differently. You'd be like, oh, well, your Pluto is in Capricorn, and my Pluto here is in Virgo, and those are Earth signs, and that has this meaning, versus Pluto is in an air sign, and that has a very different meaning. You can still utilize knowledge of astrology and the heavens in order to, like, have timing and bearings and know maybe what to go and look for internally. But you don't have to go and listen to all of these kind of like Babylonian mythologies to interpret actual reality through. So, all right, so that was the video for now. For those of you who are interested, I'm doing another class. I'm not certain when I'm going to start, probably in the next 30 days or so. 10 students for natural astrology, and I'm teaching the practice of astrology, which begins with being able to interpret charts, to be able to understand what's literally happening, to then be able to move through an astrological understanding without getting caught up in all of this sort of mumbo jumbo, or at least being able to know what this mumbo jumbo is, because you can still use this and be empowered by it as well. If you're interested, send me a message, and I'll give you the details. All right. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon. Take good care.